Good evening. Hope that there are people back there, aren't there? Yeah, I think most everyone showered in the last week. Um, Man, next time y'all could join us. But whether you're sitting in the back or in the front, thank you for being here. There are plenty of seats up here, but I know that those are the best. Otherwise, they wouldn't get full the fastest. Um, Nonetheless, thank you for being here. Hope you had an enjoyable afternoon. We're going to go ahead and open up our Bibles to Exodus. And there's this awesome scene that, I mean, should should never get old to us as we read about the events that unfold. Moses is tending his sheep, and then off in the distance there is this bush, right, that is on fire. So Moses goes and checks it out, and the bush starts talking to him. And the first thing it says is, take off your shoes. You're on holy ground. First of all, I've never had a bush speak to me. Second of all, I've never had a bush say, take off your shoes. Third, I've never had a bush say, you're on holy ground. But this bush speaks to Moses, and Moses follows the command, and lo and behold, it is the God of Israel. And the God of Israel, speaking to Moses through this bush, he gives him orders. I want you to go take my people out of Egyptian captivity. I've heard their cry, and I want you to be their deliverer. I want you to go before them. So, in the midst of this conversation, Moses comes up with several excuses, which is where we're going to arrive and where we're going to begin our, our journey this morning, looking at the idea, three different events in the life of Moses when he believed when maybe I wouldn't. When he had, in my opinion, from my perspective, he had stronger faith than I did. Now, again, he's talking to a bush that's on fire, not burning up, and the bush is speaking to him. So that might be more convincing than some of these other circumstances, but nonetheless, against belief, he believed. Exodus chapter 4, where we're going to look at this conversation that Moses is having with God in the burning bush. And he believed when God said, I need you to deliver my people out of Egyptian captivity. He believed even when he was, first point, timid. Even when he was timid, Moses believed. Even when he thought that he wasn't the right choice. Even when he thought, I can't do this, he still believed that God was able to do it with him. For instance, let's look at these excuses that he comes up with to further our point. Verse 1, chapter 4, then Moses answered, but behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. They're not going to listen to me. The first thing that he comes up with. Now, that may make sense. You know, he's been away from Egypt for 40 years. And even when he was in Egypt, right, he was in the house of Pharaoh. So why would they even begin to believe this man? Where have you been? Why weren't you with us? Why weren't you oppressed? So the first excuse is they're not going to believe me. And then God answers there in verse 3 and again further in verse 6. And he gives them these signs, right? Put your hand in your cloak. Bring it out. It's leprous. Put it back in. It's clean again. Pour water on the ground and it's going to become blood. Throw your stick, your staff on the ground and watch it turn into a snake. Pick it up by its tail and it's going to turn back into a staff and you're going to believe, right? But Moses still, even after all of those things, Moses still was timid, right? I mean, seeing your stick turn into a snake and seeing water turn into blood and your hand leprous and clean again. That might make you believe a little bit more. But he comes up with another excuse in verse 10. Moses said to the Lord, "Oh, my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." And then God answers in verse 11. Then the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth, or who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Don't talk to me, Moses, about talking. I made you. I made your mouth. I make everything. How dare you bring it up to me? I'm not eloquent," he says. And then one final excuse, if you could call it an excuse, in 13 through 15. We'll read that together. When he simply says in verse 13, "Oh, my Lord, please send someone else. Just pick somebody else, God. I'm not eloquent. They're not going to believe me." And then finally, we arrive in verse 13 at "just pick someone else." It's almost like he's run out of excuses and he's grasping at straws. Just please someone else. And then verse 14, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, "Is there not Aaron your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do." Another answer from God. So we have, three excuses from Moses and maybe more as to why he is not the person, why he believed, I'm not capable. I'm not the guy that you want. I'm not good enough, maybe. Have you ever been there? Have you ever faced a situation in life and you thought, I just can't. I can't do it. I'm not good enough, or I haven't been to the right school to do this, or I haven't had the right experience, or God, I don't even know how to get started. And we begin to pile up all these excuses in our minds as to why we aren't good enough. But at the end of the day, perhaps the difference many times between us and Moses is found in verse 20. Look at this. At the end of the conversation, verse 20, so Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. Even when he thought he wasn't able and wasn't capable of doing, don't forget, he came up with several excuses, but at the end of the day, Moses got on his donkey and he went back to Egypt. When you think that you're not capable, when you think that you're not suited for the situation, or that somebody, just remember, just pack up your bags and go and watch God. Or what? Because after all, isn't it God that created your mouth? Isn't it God that shows you and proves time and time again that He is with you? Isn't it God that created the church to surround you and to support you and to help you? Isn't it God, after all, who has done all those things? At the end of each of these points, we're going to turn to Psalms, which is where we're going right now. And hopefully, when I'm outside doing something and I'm looking for something to fill my mind, I have Psalms going in the background. What what an encouragement. Throughout centuries, they've been encouraging. And in this idea of being timid and being fearful, look at this particular psalm in Psalm 34, beginning in verse 1. It says, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them. He shall, did you pick that up? He shall never be ashamed. Those who look at him shall be radiant. Isn't that an echo of Moses? Doesn't that remind you of Moses coming down from Mount Sinai when his face shined? He will deliver them. Verse 7. Doesn't that remind you of Moses? How he delivered the Israelites? He delivered me from all my, verse 4, fears. When you're worried, when you're anxious, when you're fearful, when you're timid, remember, God will deliver you. God has the capability to take care of you no matter what is going on in your life. There's another time, another event in the life of Moses I want to look at. We have, at this particular junction, we have escaped the hand of Pharaoh. We have crossed the Red Sea, and we are on our way. And along the way, God has provided us with manna from heaven. God has provided us even when we were complaining. God has always taken care of us. And here we are. We arrive at this particular point in our journey, and Moses is tired. Moses is tired, and he believed God even when he was tired. And we have seen now the Amalekites. And the Amalekites, they have come to war against us here in Exodus chapter 17. And they're looking for a fight. The charge Moses gives to Joshua, I want you to pick some valiant men, and I want you to go, and I want you to defeat the Amalekites. Aaron, myself, and Hur. Who is Hur? We don't know. H-U-R, not H-E-R. Aaron, Moses, and Hur going up to the mountain, and we're going to supervise. You remember the story. Let's read it together, beginning in verse 8. Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, choose for us men to go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua, in verse 10, did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary in verse 12. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, while Aaron and Hur held up his hands on one side and on the other. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Even when he's tired, Moses still believed. Wouldn't it have been so easy just to let your hands down? Wouldn't it have been so easy in your mind to think, you know what? God has delivered us from Egypt and we've escaped and he's given us this bread. I mean, surely he's going to take care of us. Wouldn't that have been so easy to do? But Moses believed that as long as I hold my hands up, God is going to take care of us. Even when he was tired, Moses believed in God, in the power of God. In this particular story, I think there's a lot of different applications for our life. So when you're tired, when you feel discouraged, when you feel downhearted, remember Moses. He was tired. He was downright exhausted. And you know what he did? He embraced it. He sat down. He allowed other people to hold up his hands, and he watched God win. He sat down and he watched God win. You ever feel tired? Do you ever feel like you can't go one more step? Sit down, watch God win. Just like Moses. Because I believe the victory is already God's, isn't it? Far too often we find ourselves struggling with all of our might, and we forget that the battle already belongs to God. And all we have to do is sit down and watch God work. Recall the scene at the Red Sea, and the Israelites again began to complain. He brought us out here, God brought us out, and here is Pharaoh behind us and his army, and he's about to kill us. And Moses quieted the crowd. All you have to do is be silent and watch God. Watch the victory that God will work for you this day. All you have to do is be silent. Watch God win. I think there's an important lesson, especially when we think about the church here in this context, that we need each other. That when you are feeling tired, that when you are feeling exhausted, that you can't take one more step, hey, look around. There are people who want to help you. Cling to your comrades. They are in it with you. Let me let you in on a little secret. Nobody can help you unless they know that you need help. Just can't do it. Have you ever heard somebody complain? I have. Well, I was there and nobody did this for me. Well, did we know that you needed it? I promise you that we will bend over backwards if we see the need. Hur and Aaron, they saw Moses' hands drooping. They saw the need and they came to his rescue. Cling to your comrades. And when help is given, embrace it. That's what the church was created for. We're not meant to go through this alone. And maybe more importantly than all of this, put what you are doing in perspective with what God is doing. Put it all in perspective. Who won the battle? Was there anything significant about Moses doing this? Is that what won the battle? I don't think so. I think it was God. We may think, look at what I am doing. Look at how hard I am working, and look at how tired I am. God, watch me. How about we watch God? Put what you are doing in perspective with what God is doing. Hasn't God done so much more than we could ever do? Hasn't He? Won't He continue? Put it in perspective. Journey with me again to the book of Psalms. Look at the 27th here. 27th Psalm. Again, I think we can certainly find encouragement throughout Psalms, but here, when we are tired, this might be a good one to go to. Verse 13 and verse 14. As this psalm closes, the psalmist says this: I believe that I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Wait for God. You see, what happens far too often is that we get so consumed with ourselves and our own ideas and what we can do and we forget and we push God aside. And we're so self-centered that we forget that God is actually the one that is at work. Remember God. Wait for the Lord. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart. Wait for God. Watch God win. There is a moment in Moses' life that I believe is particularly difficult, or at least from my perspective, I believe it would have been difficult for me to experience, is the moment when his brother and his sister opposed him to his face. You know, things hurt, don't they? And it hurts when we are maligned and when we are disrespected by other people. When strangers speak evil against us, it hurts, doesn't it? But how much more does it hurt when your own family speaks evil against you? How much deeper does that wound go when those that you love and that you cherish and, hey, even grew up with? Moses believed in God even when he was tested. Even when he was tested by his own brother and sister. We're going to begin in Numbers chapter 12, and we're going to look beginning in verse 2, moving through verse 10. Somewhat lengthy, so I pray that you stay with me. Numbers 12, beginning in verse 2. And they said, has the Lord, because Moses married this Cushite woman, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? And the Lord heard it. Now, verse 3, now the man Moses was very meek, more than all the people who were on the face of the earth. And suddenly the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron and Miriam, come out, you three, to the tent of meeting. And the three of them went out. And the Lord came down in a pillar of a cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent and called Aaron and Miriam. And they both came forward. And he said, hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth clearly and not in riddles. And he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Lord, in verse 9, was kindled against them, and he departed. When the cloud removed from over the tent, behold, Miriam was leprous like snow. And Aaron turned to Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. Let's stop there. He believed in God. He was meek. Indeed, he was meek. How many of us would, in our righteous indignation, strike out against our brother and sister and point a finger at them and say, how dare you? Look at how much I've done for you. Look at how I have delivered you. Moses. What Moses simply did was he left it up to God. He just let God take care of it. You talk about meekness. Leave it to God. That is how you can believe that God is in control. This is ultimate trust that God is a just God, that God is seeing, and that God's going to take care of the situation. Whatever it is, don't worry about it. God's got it. Leave it to God. Another lesson here is that From Moses, be quick to forgive. Be quick to forgive. Moses, leprous. Verse 11, Aaron, seeing her, turns to Moses and said, "Oh, my Lord." My Lord. Your brother says, oh, my Lord, do not punish us. To Moses, do not punish us because we have done foolishly and have sinned. Let her not be as one dead whose flesh is half eaten away when he comes out of his mother's womb. Now, what would Moses do? What would you do? We know what Moses did, but what would you do? Maybe cross your arms and say, well, she got what was coming to her. That'll teach her. Don't mess with me. God's going to get her. What goes around comes around. Moses, in his meekness, verse 13, cried out, "Oh God, please heal her, please." Moses, even when he was tested, he believed that God was in control. Even when he was tested. Look at one last psalm with me in the 56th Psalm. Look at the first few verses here. Psalm number 56. Be gracious to me, David says, O God, for man tramples me. All day long an attacker oppresses me. My enemies trample on me all day long, for many attack me proudly. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you, in God, whose word I praise. In God I trust. I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? You ever feel afraid? Do you ever feel threatened or opposed or as if you are standing at odds with the world, much like Moses would have felt, or maybe at odds with your family? I would encourage you to turn to a passage like this or this one and remember, if we trust in God, what's the worst that could happen? What is the worst that could happen? In the eyes of the world, the worst thing that could happen is that we die. And let me tell you, if we die, it is far better for us, Paul says, that if we die, we can be with the Lord. What's the worst that could happen? I can't fear because flesh. When you are afraid, remember, God is in control. Moses, what a great example of belief at odds when he was tired, when he was tested, when he was opposed. Moses still trusted in God. I guess the question for us is, I don't know what's going on in your life. Maybe you are being tested. Maybe you are tired. Maybe you are weary and you need some encouragement. That's what we're here for. The church is for encouragement so that we can get through this life together, move on to a better life. Maybe you need to put your trust in God to begin with.